Good morning. Welcome to my channel. My name is Shoshana, and I want to talk a little bit about breaking behavioral patterns or dynamics within a relationship, changing dynamics. So, the thing about a dynamic within a relationship, it is a dynamic between two or more parts. But it is one energetic mechanism. So it's one energetic mechanism that more than one participants are kind of bond within this pattern, within this emotional pattern, energetic pattern, structure of behavioral patterns, and each person within this structure of behavior, within this pattern, or within this energetic template, within this dynamic, because it's one dynamic, that means that there is cause and effect, and the effect is also creating the cause. It is a spiral, it is a circle. So when one part makes a tiny adjustment to their behavior, it breaks the whole dynamic down. So all of a sudden, there's change within that dynamic. So each part of the dynamic have equal power within the dynamic, even if it is an aggressor and the aggressed, or a an abuser and the abused. Both parts have to play their part in order for the dynamic to work. And a abuser cannot continue to abuse if there isn't the second part of that dynamic feeding into it. So if you are in a relationship where you are perceived to be the abused, there is a part in there and you have power, you have equal power. I'm talking about a relationship that is, um, um, I know that there's sometimes physical constraints, and I know that there are dynamics also between a child and a parent that are in the same dynamic. But I'm talking about a relationship. I'm talking about I'm bringing it into a more abstract way of looking at it, so that you can understand the dynamic, because this dynamic can be broken by either participant, and typically the abuser, because being an abuser is putting blame out, is not taking responsibility. So if an abuser is lashing out, it is giving him relief of some kind of symptom within him. That means when he lashes out, he gets relief from his own inner turmoil. But the abuser in a relationship is, because they are doing the blame and they are looking outward for relief of their own inner turmoil, typically they are not going to be the ones that take the first step within the relationship to break the dynamic, because first of all, the relief that they are getting from that dynamic, and secondly, because they are busy looking outward, they're not looking inward to find where they are creating this cycle. It's like the blame game. When you're blaming somebody else, you're not taking responsibility for your part in it, because you have to wait for that other person is responsible for what's going on. It's not you. And so when you are as an abused within a relationship, or perceive yourself to be an abused, because you are playing that part, you are pulling your strength from the abuser. You feel as though the abuser has the power in the relationship. So it's the same thing, but it's the opposite side of it. There has to be two sides of the coin for the coin to exist. A cycle of behavior, a dynamic within a relationship, is one energetic unit. That means that it is dependent on both sides to play their part, and both sides have equal power within that dynamic. It cannot exist if it is not equal. And it is codependent on each other. This is a codependency when you're in a relationship that is not building and it's a relationship that is breaking, it's breaking both parts down, because the abuser is also not taking responsibility and standing up. They're running away from whatever inner turmoil. They're not doing the inner work. They're lashing out. That's a way for them to get relief. And an abuser has to have an abused within the relationship. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to go into this more in depth. I actually started recording a video about abusive relationships. And when I started recording, I realized that it is such an important subject that I really want to do the work. So I'm going to structure the video. I typically just open up the video just like this video, and I begin to speak, and the messages just come through. I can see the energetic templates of what I speak about, and then I just tell about the energetic templates. It's channeling of sorts. And with a abusive relationship, it is such an important subject that I really want to do it justice. I want to be able to make a video that has all of the different aspects within it and kind of like a map to the pattern and how to break the cycles. So that will be coming up in the next week. I started recording it and then I realized that I really want to do it justice. So it will be coming up. I'm making notes as we go along, but this is just a small aspect of that, and kind of uh, um, to give the understanding of how it is structured and how it is one unit. And then when one part of that dynamic changes, so you can change the dynamic, even because when you are in an abusive relationship or in one of these dynamics, you're blind to it. You're playing your part. You're on automatic. Whatever your part is giving you also relief, because if you are a victim, that means that you are also not taking responsibility. That means that you feel weak. You feel under somebody. You feel that you are less than. You feel powerless when you are a victim within a relationship. And those dynamics feed into that powerlessness feeling. But I want you to understand that you always have the power in your life. Whether you're giving your power away, that's your power. You're giving it to somebody else to tell you who you are and stick you in your place. But it's serving you in a way because you don't feel like you can do it on your own. And a lot of times when you have an aggressor within the relationship, it's perceived as strength and you feel weak. And so you have this other person that feels like they're strong because they're the aggressor, and they have all the answers, and they're dominant and dominating you. And you as a victim can perceive this as power, and you can see, you feel like you're powerless within that dynamic, that you're powerless within the relationship. But here's the thing: an aggressor and the aggressed, they are two sides of the same thing. So the aggressor has to have, an abuser has to have an abused. And typically they have an object of abuse. So they won't abuse the whole world. They'll have one child that they abuse. They have their life partner that they abuse behind closed doors. And it doesn't mean that if you are in an abusive relationship that you are weak in every single aspect of your life. There's many women or men that are in the home. Something in their belief system makes them believe that they are not worthy, or this is what they are worthy of, or some kind of weakness that they can't. Scarcity. I have to take whatever partner comes in, because there may not be a partner for me if I don't, or I'm unworthy of somebody treating me right. And typically, these were things that we were raised with, things that we were taught from society, from the home that we came from. So there is no blame here. We're simply looking at this dynamic. We're kind of picking it apart and looking and putting it on the table and looking at it. Why is this happening? So there is no blame, and there is no reason, because a victim will go in and start beating themselves up within, like, oh, I'm sad. See, I can't even do this right. And there is no amount of blame. You cannot reduce yourself enough in order to heal yourself. It has to come from a place of empowerment. So we're just looking at this dynamic. There is no judgment in it, and there is no self-judgment. But because if you start taking self-judgment and start beating yourself up and saying, oh, I'm so whatever, then you are reinforcing that powerlessness And when you are blaming yourself or feeling ashamed of yourself, those are one of the lowest vibrational emotions that you can feel. And it's very difficult to pick yourself up out of that place, especially if you have somebody within the dynamic pushing you down even further. And and when you are being pushed down continuously, it is serving the purpose of the abuser. He has to have you down, feeling that you are unworthy. So they're feeding into that weakness. Even if what they're doing is putting you down for the weakness, it is still weakening you even more, right? Because there are relationships that break you. You get in this downward spiral where you break each other and you don't allow each other to heal, right? There is no amount of accommodation that you can do to an abuser. There is no amount of common sense that you can speak with in order to change an abuser, because an abuser has to abuse in order to receive the relief within themselves, and so they are not looking for that common sense. So you can come at them with all the common sense in the world. That is not somebody that doesn't want to hear, it's falling on deaf ears. So there is no point in it, because they have to abuse. And this is a mistake that often people within a abusive dynamic think that they can fix it through compassion, through love, through accommodation. I will lessen myself. I won't. And in the end, what you're doing is you're doing self-sabotage. And not only are you doing self-sabotage, you are trying to heal this other person. You're trying to tell this other person, but look, and they don't want to see. They can't see. So it doesn't, no amount of accommodation or common sense will break the cycle. The only thing that will break the cycle is changing something in the dynamic, changing something up, refusing. See, and when there is this dynamic, right, there's an emotional outcome, right? So within the dynamic, there is the behavior of the dynamic, which could be would be abusive, it could be verbal, it could be physical, but there is a physical dynamic going on. Now there's also the physical dynamic, but there is also the emotional, energetic dynamic. So if one person lashes out, the other person takes it and feels really bad and goes down into this hole and plays the part of the victim, agrees to get hurt by this other behavior, right? Because if somebody comes to you and you know that you are a genius and you know that you are worthy and you know that you are smart, and somebody says, "Oh, you're stupid," it you won't take it. It'll fly right over your head. It won't even be relevant to you. You're like, "Okay, whatever." And so it will not interfere with your internal feeling. But if somebody comes to you and says, "You're stupid," and inside you believe, "Oh no, I am stupid. They saw me," and you take it and you get hurt from it, you're making it relevant to you. Something in you believes it to be true or believes you worthy of that. Otherwise, it would not hurt you. The reason that it hurts you is because you, somewhere inside, even it could be in your subconscious, you believe that to be true, and then and then you become embarrassed that they saw you, and then it hurts. Or you love this person and, "Oh no, I'm not worthy of them." And another thing about pain and about emotion is that emotion is yours. It's inside of you. You are the owner. You are in ownership of that emotion. That is why people can be in the same exact atmosphere. One person can be in complete turmoil and hell on earth, and another person can be inspired and happy, heaven on earth. Typically, they will fall away from each other because they do not coexist together. A very happy person that is very uh, um, has self-integrity and self-compassion and self-assurance and believes in themselves, typically don't hang around people that are wallowing in self-pity. And see, a relationship is equal. is equal in the healing aspects of themselves and is also equal in the self-assurance. So an abuser, even though it may appear that they know what they're doing and they're on top, that is the mask. Because somebody who really is all of that, with all of that strength and believes in themselves, do not need to abuse another. And not only do they not need, they would never abuse another, because it wouldn't give them any kind of satisfaction. It would bring them down to a place of low self-esteem, low integrity. That is not a powerful place to be. So an abused and an abuser are at the same level of self-esteem. And if you are in an abusive relationship, what you perceive to be an abusive relationship, typically the abuser is not going to change the pattern, because it is not only are they not going to change the pattern, they latch on to the abused because that is their lifeline. That is where they get all of their relief. If that abuser or the abused for 1 second doesn't believe that they're worth it and start trying to walk away, then they pull out all the stops. They know it's two sides of the same thing. So they know all of your buttons, every single aspect of you. They know what all of your triggers. They know all of your insecurities, and they know exactly what you are also in want of, which is a loving relationship. So all of a sudden they pull out all of that, all of everything that you wanted within that relationship the whole time, and it becomes like a honeymoon. And that is the cycle of abused abuser, right? It's a cycle of abuse, abuse, abuse. This one it gets too much. They're ready to walk away. And then this one comes in, oh, I'm sorry. They bring flowers, or it doesn't even have to be that dramatic. But all of a sudden, they're really sorry and they're really soft. And then you see all of the sides. And as the abused, you feel weak within yourself. You don't really want to go out on your own. You would much rather have the dynamic change so that you could stay, or would you? Because a victim in a relationship can also create an abuser. Because if somebody is in victim and they come into a relationship and they're the victim, then they have to be a victim of something, right? So because they don't want to stand up and take power and take responsibility and make all the decisions. So they will become the victim and they will start the blame game. Oh, it's your response. It's the same side of the dynamic. It's the same dynamic, two sides, and they're codependent. They create the cycle. And if you want to break that, you have to somehow stick a spoke in that cycle. That means you can either emotionally change it. That means and this is where the goal, right? Where you just don't take it anymore. It's not relevant to you. You are above that. If they're lashing out at you, then has nothing to do with you. And if you don't fall into that emotional pattern, you break the dynamic. The dynamic quits there because you quit feeding it. It would be like a cat when it's playing with an insect. As long as the insect is still alive and kicking, the dynamic goes. The minute that the insect quits, there's no pull in it anymore. Now, an abuser, if he's abusing somebody that doesn't lash back or take it or doesn't fulfill the other opposite side of the dynamic, you quit feeding that dynamic. And then the abuser is just left being a butthole because they're abusing somebody that's like, really? What? Have you ever met people that no matter what, they would never be a victim of? So also when you are in this cycle, you can't see it because you're drowning. You're drowning emotionally. You're being held down. You don't have that inspiration. If you are being beat down and being made to feel inadequate and being made to feel worthless, then you don't have the power to lift yourself up out of it. And not only that, you don't see the dynamic from within the dynamic because you're emotionally invested and emotionally involved. And there's love there's all sorts of emotions, and there's also habit and it's something within you believes that this is what you are worthy of, or the relationship that you are meant to have. And in your mind, or in your soul, you do have this yearning and this longing for somebody that will come in and actually love you and build you up and hold you and see your worth and help you go through these things. An abuser will not want for your health. They are reinforcing your weaknesses, creating dependencies. I've met women that don't have license because they're in a relationship where that is the power of their partner. They hold all of that power. You can't move without me. You are dependent on me. They create these dependencies and make you believe that they're the only one that can provide these dependencies for you, and you're not capable within yourself because you're all of the things that they're saying that you are. And when you realize this, you can change this dynamic by either rising above it and saying, like, no more, no way, and facing your own fears, because you are going to have to go through and walk that walk. You're going to have to go through and face life on your own and realize that you're worthy and that you are capable, that you have the power that any other human being on this planet has to make your own life. You can't be dependent on somebody else to make your life. Anybody that is looking for somebody to be dependent on them, they are weak within themselves, because they feel that the only way that somebody will be with them is if they are dependent on them. So they create this dependency, which reinforces the places that you are not healed and not standing up. It reinforces your weaknesses and your victimness. And it reinforces that cycle. And you could either change it by emotionally change it, which typically this is going to be very difficult because you don't feel inspired. But something that you can do is change the physical reaction. You can change the physical reaction, and that will play over into the energetic field, because once you physically do something different, don't react. That's the easiest, because a lot of times we don't see what we're doing. But if you are able to sit in that and not react, zero reaction, you will deplete that one round of the cycle, that one, because a dynamic keeps going around. So you will deplete that round. And if you change your reaction from what it was to something new, you'll mess the cycle, and there will be a point in which this cycle is broken. It'll throw everything off. The abuser won't know what to do with it, and in the beginning, it will make them push that abuse even further, because they're looking for that response that they always got. They have to get it, so they will push even further. It will be even more painful. And that's where the self-healing comes in, because once you don't react, and once you find that power, that you have the power to break that dynamic. And it doesn't mean that you have to be all healed all at once. You just have to break one cycle, and then the next cycle, and then the next cycle. The dynamic will change. It has to change. It can't continue in that same cycle. It'll get some kind of, it'll get shaken up. And the abuser will not understand what's going on. What all of a sudden he's not getting, he or she or is not getting the reaction and the satisfaction that they typically get, because they get satisfaction from it. It's like a verbal masturbation for them. They get the relief that they need. It's an addiction. And once they don't get that, first of all, they're going to push further. So then that requires you to stand even stronger. You become so determined to break that cycle that it becomes like a game for you. It becomes your place of power is creating change. And you don't always know how to change, and you're not always able to see your reactions, because these are emotional reactions. You get lost in it. And so even just having the intention of changing the reaction will eventually bring you to a place where and knowing that you have the power, you are part of this one energetic unit. This dynamic has more than one person in it, but it is one unit. one energetic unit. You have to break that cycle. And when you break that cycle, you can start breaking it slowly. Just knowing that you want to and putting intention will bring your awareness to it. So you may fall into that hole a few times, but you will start seeing where you're falling in. It's almost like you're playing you're acting it out, and then you wake up and you say, wait a minute, that was the trigger. That was the power point. That was the point in which I could have acted different. That was the point where I could have not fallen into the same. And so the first part is just being aware, being able to see it, recognize it. And then once you recognize it, you may still fall into it because you get lost in those deep emotions and the habits and the feeling of despair, right? Because typically, and this was something I was talking about before, is that the abuser won't change the pattern, but the abused is the one that does the internal, is the one that keeps on looking inward. What can I change? How can I fix this? So when you are willing to look inward, you can take the power back. If you're just lashing out and blaming, even as a victim, if you're blaming you're not taking responsibility, it's also the same thing, right? But you are willing to look inside and adjust yourself. This is part of the dynamic. The abused is always trying to be avoidant of that abuse. So they're always looking inward to how can I adjust? What can I change? How can I be more accommodating? What can I do not to trigger the abuse? But there's nothing you can do not to trigger that abuse. Because if you modify all of the behaviors that until now have created the abuse, the abuser has to abuse and they will find something. So you cannot be perfect enough not to get that abuse because that is their addiction. And that is their place that they are able to get relief from their own selves. They're not taking responsibility. So typically the one that breaks the cycle is the one that is abused. And breaking the cycle can be very, very, very difficult because you have to face the things that you fear the most, which are going out on your own, believing in yourself that you are capable, that you are able, that you are able to support yourself in every aspect, right? Not just monetary. And that's also a big one. A lot of times in abusive relationships, we become very, very dependent on the other to support us monetary, but that's also part of the cycle, making you believe that you can't and aren't capable of it, but you are, just like any other human is. And you can also trust that those things will open. It seems like a big thing to have to deal with, but you can trust that once you start moving in life, those things open up for you. You can trust. You can trust. You can trust yourself as you heal and as you rise. Those things are natural outcomes of a healed person. And to be able to have the strength to move away from an abusive relationship or to change abusive relationship. And typically, an abused cannot stay because as long as you stay, you are reinforcing, you are allowing the abuser to abuse. So and we always stay because we're going to heal them. They're a really good person underneath. We see them, we love them, and that is okay because that is part of your softness and part of your compassion and part of who you are. But it is also enabling that behavior. The true love and the true power of it is when you walk away and don't allow them anymore, then they have to face it within themselves. And only then can they do the healing. Because until then, they can lash out and they can get that relief and they don't have to face themselves. But you truly, truly, truly have to walk away. And then you remove that half of the dynamic. Now, if they're not willing to do the healing, they may run off and find another counterpart that is willing to get that. But that is not your responsibility. You and your life are your responsibility. And once you move and once you find that power, that's the healing within itself. All of a sudden you're like, whoa, I did have the power. And you're surprised and not only surprised, you're proud of yourself and you realize your capabilities and you realize that how grand you are and how deserving you are when you find the power to remove yourself from that to break that dynamic, because that dynamic is a very strong dynamic. It holds the two parts in place very strong. It bonds them within this abusive cycle, because whoever is in an abuse together are bond together. It doesn't matter if one's the abused and one's the abusee. They both feel, and when you walk away, they are going to feel like they're the abused. How dare you? You abandoned them. Their core wounds are going to be touched and opened. And it's going to be your fault. Just like everything else was your fault. It's going to be your fault. And in order for you to withstand that, because it's going to be worse than it ever was for a while until it gets better. So you have to go through that part. And in order for you to withstand within that amount of, it's going to be like the dynamic comes to a head. A dynamic comes to the point of the most power right before it dies. It's like you always hear that people right before they move on, all of a sudden they have this energy spurt. And it's the same thing. The dynamic is going to get when you start breaking that dynamic, there becomes a urgency in that dynamic. There becomes an urgency. No, 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 it's dying. The dynamic is an energetic, alive thing. And when something is dying, it starts trying to grasp at anything that it can. So there's going to be an urgency and there's a word here that's perfect for this. There's an urgency and I can't find the word, and it's not worth just umming a whole bunch. So this urgency, and that's just like the perfect word. I don't know, something with a D, I think. And so know that you have the power, know that you have the capability, know that once you withstand that breaking point and that point that everything gets 10 times worse and then it just depletes. And an abuser will try to hold on. It's their lifeline. The abused is their lifeline. And so they're going to pull out every single thing that they have. It's going to create a really quick dynamic of beating you up. Oh, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. And then you don't move from your center. And then it's, oh, I'm going to change. It'll forever be good. This will never happen again. And you are going to be at that point very tempted to fall back into it, into this honeymoon. Oh, all of the love and the gushiness and everything that you ever wanted all of a sudden is presented to you, everything you wanted from the relationship. But when you see that they didn't do the healing, so that dynamic cannot change, and you have to be strong enough within yourself to walk away even through the begging stage, the honeymoon stage. You have to be able to see, well, that is part of the dynamic. It's like sour sweet. It's not really sweet. It's bittersweet. And because you can't really let your guard down. You can go into it and you can enjoy that honey that you're getting for the minute, the honey bucket that you're thrown into. But you know that once you surrender back in, they feel like they have you under their clutches. And there is no blame in this, because you can love them through this as well, because those behaviors were caused from things in their own childhood, things that they can't deal with inside, their own inner turmoil. And you can see all that. That's why you keep on being pulled back in. So when you can withhold that, knowing that that is part of this dynamic, and you can't fully surrender into them or trust them that they're not going to hurt you again, then you can withstand that and say, no, not the honey, and not I don't want the honey of it, and I don't want the lashing of it. Don't want either side of it. And if you are willing to walk away, and it takes such inner strength, because not only are you dealing with that dynamic and walking away from it, breaking the dynamic and withholding against that honey, that all of a sudden everything that you ever wanted, you're also facing your own fears. So the temptation is to collapse back into that dynamic. And so I'm seeing that this is already getting very long. So I'm sending you guys so much love and strength. And if you would like to schedule with me a personal session to be able to look at your own individual dynamic and see it, sometimes we just need help being able to get bird's eye view, then you can contact me. My contact information is below, either through Facebook or through my website. Then we can schedule a one on one and kind of look at your own dynamic. So if you need help, you can reach out. Thank you so much for watching. Sending you guys so much love.